Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Deep True Crime, where we dive deep and see what's going on in some of these true crime cases. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the rise and fall of Prince Andrew. Yes, royal family member. And so, with a lot that's going on right now, and especially around the Buckingham Palace, last thing that Queen Elizabeth wants to be worried about is her son facing this lawsuit that's really going to make them look bad. Because this, right now, it sure looks like he's very guilty. Who's to say what will end up happening? Whether he will end up spending any time in prison, whether he will end up spending any time doing any time at all. But if I had to take a guess, I feel like this will be settled outside of court. But why? And we'll dive into all of that. But that's exactly what all of this is focused on, is this civil lawsuit brought on by Virginia Giuffre against Prince Andrew. So she is suing Prince Andrew in the Federal District Court of Southern New York, Southern District of New York, something like that. She's accusing him of sexual assault and intentional infliction of emotional distress. So she feels like, for good reasons, that when she was a young girl, because she was 17 when this happened, Prince Andrew took advantage of a relationship that maybe he had. I don't really know all of this, but she is suing him because he, as an adult, did have sex with her while she was 17 years old. That right there is wrong by itself. But that's not what this big deal, in my opinion, is. It's really around sex trafficking, which we've heard about in one form or another quite a bit. And now she, after having a child, she felt like, I have a daughter now. I would hate for my daughter to go through what I did. And so she is filing a lawsuit against what his actions were. And truth is, like, right now, it's not looking good for him at all. And so Prince Andrew, his lawyers, they did file a response stating that their client was, of course, unequivocally denies Giuffre's false allegations. And so, but January of this year, 2022, that was thrown out. He loses his civil case of, I don't want to bring this to court. I don't want this to go to trial. I don't want to, basically, he tries to have it dismissed. But Judge Kaplan, he rejects Andrew's attempts to dismiss the case. And so he allows for the sexual abuse lawsuit to proceed. And that's exactly, once that was gone, that was approved, where he said, nope, we are going to continue. Boom, the very next day this comes out. With the Queen's approval and agreement, the Duke of York's military affiliations and royal patronage have been returned to the Queen. And that right there, she's like, you have no more rights as a military person. He's still the prince. He is still the prince. He still has some sort of relevancy, but he doesn't have all this same power. You know, you had where Ghislaine Maxwell, she was found guilty, and she's going to be sentenced to many years in prison. There was her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and then come to find out Prince Andrew's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein really does not look good for Andrew, and a lot has been coming down on him. And so now you have this civil lawsuit that is quickly coming to light. And so this is where that lawsuit against Prince Andrew, right away, the Queen issued, the Buckingham Palace issued a statement, and the Queen herself told Prince Andrew, we're taking away your military powers. And so he's no longer a colonel. He's no longer, holding any military title. And, you look at this, he's not even, they can't even call him His Royal Highness anymore. He's even lost that title. But why did it take this long is what I'm wondering. Why did it take so long that they did this? Because he looked guilty before this all came to light, that he had a relationship with her, with Epstein, a close relationship that he had to sever ties on. Prince Andrew had to sever ties with him. So, you had this interview in November of 2019, which ended up really being bad. It was apparently approved to be done by the Queen Elizabeth II, the mom. She gives the okay for him to have this interview with Newsnight. And so he has this interview, but it doesn't go very well. It doesn't go very well at all. And so after this interview, Andrew, he effectively leaves any public life. He's like, I'm done. I cannot represent the family basically right now in a good light at all. So he steps away from any public affairs or showing any public life, following this terrible interview. And so part of this interview, he did not address these allegations very well. The allegations of his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And this, this against him by Virginia Giuffre. And so he gave his first interview about the Jeffrey Epstein's scandal, basically. And he gives it to BBC, which is a well-known British news channel, media channel. And he himself starts saying things that he was, his behavior, his conduct was not becoming of a member of the royal family. And so he says just like that in his interview, not something that was becoming of a member of the royal family. And he goes on to say other things. I stayed with him, and that's something I kick myself for on a daily basis because it was not something that was becoming of a member of the royal family. And we try and uphold the highest standards and practices, and I let the side down. Simple as that. He says this to BBC as well. And this is where it's like he obviously knew he did something wrong. He obviously knew. He even says other stuff like that, what he did, some serious, why he hung out with Epstein. There were some serious beneficial outcomes with the people he was meeting. He even says the people that I met and the opportunities that I was given to learn, either by him or because of him, were actually very useful. So he was close with Epstein. He was very close with Epstein from what it sounds like. And he says, I took the judgment call that because this was serious and I felt that doing it over the telephone was the chicken's way of doing it, I had to go and see him and talk to him. He's referring to Jeffrey Epstein when Epstein was in trouble for what he had done in another lawsuit and stuff like that. So Andrew didn't really start coming to light with everything on what he did until some things came out about what was sealed. Just came out. And so we'll talk about that as well. But now he knows, like, okay, things are starting to get hot and heavy, and I'm going to be in trouble. And so let's talk a little about Prince Andrew. He was born in the Belgium suite of Buckingham Palace. And he is also Prince Andrew, Duke of York. I don't think he loses the Duke of York title. He was born Andrew Albert Christian Edward, born on February 19th of 1960. And he was born into royal heritage, royal family. He became a big deal right away. And being a part of the British royal family, there's so many things that are tied to who you are. Being there, he's the third child now when he was born. He's the third child, and he's the second son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, who is Duke of Edinburgh. And he was baptized in the palace's music room on April 8th of 1960. And which was only like less than 3 months after he was born. And so he grew up really following in his dad's footsteps. The royal household announces in November of 1978 that Andrew would join the Royal Navy the following year. And so a month later, he goes through various sporting tests and examinations to see how qualified he can be and to pass these things, which he did. He did a lot of different testings at the Aircrew Selection Center at the RAF Biggin Hill, and he had tests and more interviews at HMS Daedalus. So he was really being primed to do big things. And during March and April 1979, he was enrolled at the Royal Navy Naval College Flight. And he underwent pilot training where he would learn how to fly. And he was accepted as a trainee helicopter pilot. And he would go on to sign on for 12 years, starting in May 11th of 1979. So he really served a lot of his life when he started on that. And he was appointed as a midshipman. He entered Britannia Royal Naval College. He went to Dartmouth. The guy was really well on his way. He truly was. And I mean, that's where he served a lot of his Royal Navy life, going all through the Royal Marines, All Arms Commando Course. And he even received the Green Beret in the Royal Marines All Arms Commando Course. This guy was doing a lot for the UK overall, and being a part of, British royalty and being able to do all of this, he was becoming a hero. Literally, he would become a hero. And he was commissioned as a sub-lieutenant on September 1st of 1981 and appointed to trained strength on 22 of October. So he was really on his way. Once after his passing out from Dartmouth, and not passing out as in he, put stuff in his body and passed out. It's what it's called, as you can see that picture in the bottom right, that's passing out from Dartmouth. Dartmouth, well-known college to this day. And Andrew went on to elementary flying training with the Royal Air Force throughout. He literally served in the Royal Navy. Then, in April of 1982, Argentina invades the Falkland Islands, which is a British overseas territory that was claimed by them. And so this would lead to the Falklands War. And so within this war, Invincible was one of the 2 operational aircraft carriers available at the time. And so as such, this would play a major role in the Royal Navy Task Force. And so this Royal Navy Task Force, they were assembled to sail south to retake the islands. And Prince Andrew's place was on this Invincible. So he was to be on this. And so his place on board and the possibility of the Queen's son being killed in action, this made for the British government, it made them very apprehensive. And the cabinet desired that Prince Andrew be moved to a desk job for the duration of the conflict. The Queen, though, insisted that her son be allowed to remain with his ship. Prince Andrew wanted to remain with his ship. And so Prince Andrew remained on board Invincible to serve as a Sea King helicopter co-pilot. And he would fly, he would be flying on missions that included the anti-submarine warfare and anti-surface warfare. So he was really playing a big role. And so he would have a career as a naval officer. That's where he spent all of his career, for the most part, was as a naval officer. So in late 1983, Andrew transferred to RNAS Portland. And there he was trained to fly the Lynx helicopter. And that was a pretty big deal at that time for a lot of people. For specific expertise of a lot of people to have the right person in it. And this was a British multi-purpose twin-engine military helicopter, and it was designed and built by Westland Helicopters. So he was taught to fly that. And so on February of 1984, he was promoted to the rank of lieutenant. There the Queen appointed him as her personal aide de camp. That person that looks over her personal being, basically. And so this is an appointment in the royal household of the UK. It is distinct from that of other aides de camp to the Queen or King. It is only bestowed on members of the royal family holding military rank. So that's how he got that from the Queen. Again, he was on his way up. And so he served aboard HMS Brazen as a flight pilot until 1986, including deployment to the Mediterranean Sea as part of the maritime group too that would go there. And so he undertook the Lieutenant's Greenwich Staff Course, and he passed that, of course. And so on October of 1986, he was transferred to the general list. And on the general list, this was, where he enrolled in a 4-month helicopter warfare. This was an instructor's course. And upon graduation, he served from February 87 to April 88 as a helicopter warfare officer. So you can see he was a big deal. And so the Duke of York, he served as flight commander and pilot of the Lynx HAS-3, which was a big deal for them in their going to war. And so, like I said, he was on his way up in so many ways. The things he would do for the UK, he went to fight for them. But he obviously had a sickness in order to do what he did. Because 17, this guy is Royal Highness. To be able to do that, to know, do you really think you're going to get away with that for the rest of your life? You're Royal Highness. You are expected to have the highest of the highest law. And when you think of the names that are behind Jeffrey Epstein, and then that there was more names because he is said to have committed suicide. Epstein did once he was arrested again, and these charges were so serious. Now, granted, people believe that he didn't kill himself, that he was killed because of what he knew or did. Excuse me. And so here this guy was. He was a big deal for the royal family and, upholding their law. And so as his main responsibility, supervising all of the flying standards and to guarantee an effective operational capability of everything of all these helicopters and aircraft, and then being promoted to commander, this guy was a big deal. In April of 99, he finished his active naval career at the Ministry of Defense. And he finished there in 2001. So he would finish those last, 2-3 years there. And so a lot of people had a lot of respect for him. And then he had to cease using his honorary military titles in this month of this year. As soon as the judge denied his case from being dismissed, Mom the next day said, "We are taking action. We have no choice," basically. And so this action came after more than 150 Royal Navy, RAF, and Army veterans signed a letter requesting that the Queen removes his honorary military appointments in light of his involvement in a sexual assault civil case. And it is reported that he would it was reported that he would still retain his service rank of Vice Admiral. So he didn't lose every single thing. He's still Prince Andrew. Right now, it looks like he's still the Duke of York, but he loses all of his military rights, basically. And you can't really refer to him as the high person, whatever. And so he was considered Most Noble Order of the Garter, Royal Victorian Order, Canadian Forces Decoration. This guy had it all until he just did too much for his own bridges. And that's where, it's like, good thing that the judge dismissed this, because you cannot take this stuff lightly. You cannot. I know that the Queen is going through pain, and she should not be going through this. But if she was 17 years old and this man took advantage of a relationship, or because someone was able to arrange this, he did wrong. And right now, it definitely looks like he is guilty. Not just by me, you can look at everything that's involved. Why would he want to have this dismissed? He is saying that this never ever happened. Well, it looks pretty bad for you. No doubt about it. So after the judge rules that a civil suit against the prince could move forward, he was stripped of all of his military titles. So what happens now? Here you have this rising, dashing helicopter pilot and war hero who captivated millions of Britons during the Falklands Islands War. Royal watchers, people who really like to follow the royal family, they believe that he was the favorite of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. They truly believe that he was their favorite. So now he has this lawsuit from Virginia Giuffre going to it, born Virginia Roberts. So you can say Virginia Roberts Giuffre. So these days, now Prince Andrew's in trouble. Literally, Prince Andrew's in trouble now. And now he's drawing global infamy and a lot of attention over these accusations that he raped a teenager in 2001. And he has repeatedly denied these allegations, but it's all coming crashing down now. Now that the judge in Manhattan ruled that this civil case relating to the sexual abuse accusations could proceed. And that's when his mom herself told him directly, we have to take your powers, basically your military powers. And so this lawsuit This claims that it's claiming that he raped her when she was a teenager, and this is where he's going to have to defend himself against that. And it will be allowed to proceed with it, so it was not dismissed. Now he's going to have to defend himself. And you got this photo that shows Giuffre, it shows Prince Andrew, it shows Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, and they're all in her apartment. And this image has literally been widely circulating since 2011. And when this came out in 2011, right shortly after, Prince Andrew's 10-year role as a UK trade envoy was immediately terminated. And so this image, this picture with him and Ghislaine Maxwell and this 17-year-old girl did not do him justice. And so when this comes out, he cuts all his ties with Epstein. And so here you have Prince Andrew, the second son of Queen Elizabeth II, and a friend of this financier and convicted sex offender, because he was convicted at that time, Jeffrey Epstein. And so, so this image does not do well. And so now there are court papers that argue, that have been released, that he feels this stuff, that he feels like I'm released of this because this was settled back in the day with Jeffrey Epstein and Virginia Giuffre when he paid out. It's only come to light, paid out $500,000. And so, and this was under the terms of a settlement between Miss Giuffre that she reached with Jeffrey Epstein in 2009 in that lawsuit that also tied Prince Andrew. And Epstein, now he's since have been found hung in a jail cell, and this was in 2019 while he was awaiting his sex trafficking trial. And that's when Ghislaine Maxwell then shortly after was going to be facing her problems. But in this Florida case, Mr. Epstein paid Virginia Giuffre $500,000 to settle a lawsuit in which she had accused Mr. Epstein of sexually abusing her as a teenager. And so this only came out recently because of the documents being unsealed in that case. So that's why we are finding out about it now. And so the Queen, she was quick. A day after, they strip him of his military powers. And so, Queen Elizabeth, she's 95 years old. She's 95 years old. She shouldn't have to be dealing with this, but wrong is wrong. And so she has to deal with it. It raises the question that do people in power really believe they can get away with this stuff? Like, why? I mean, maybe some still do. I don't know. But going forward, no longer going to use His High Royal Highness. This is This is kind of a big status thing as a senior member of the royal family. And so this picture of them really brings problems for her, for all of them. And Virginia, she's trying to do the right thing. She has a daughter to protect. But you wonder, why did $500,000 sweep it under the rug for a little while? And I mean, you don't always know why someone says yes at that very moment. You don't. And so it's hard to even try to explain, so I won't even try to explain. But we know that when you're going through this, wrong is wrong. And the one thing you can never ever deny is that Jeffrey Epstein knew what he did was wrong. He was even convicted of it and still continued. And Prince Andrew knows he did wrong. And there's a lot of proof. There's a lot of proof that he did wrong. And, this raises the question about, class. You have the higher class, the entitlement, the toxic masculinity. It raises that question on how far do people really believe they can go? And so you got this against the part of Royal Highness. He was part of the Highness. And you have this against him. This really comes at a time when a lot of people, even in Britain, are dealing with this hashtag Me Too era. And so this really brings this hashtag Me Too movement to light and back to the front, because this stuff shouldn't happen. This stuff shouldn't happen, and we have to learn early on how to operate as a whole. This stuff shouldn't happen. Come on. She was 17. Wrong is wrong. Like, there's no way around that. And so he's wrapped up in this scandal now, and his royal duties, serving even as a trade representative for Britain, a role that brought him into the orbit of the super rich, where he was really making a lot of money in his world. He was a patron to dozens of charities and had 8 British military titles. It's like, this is why people felt like he was the favorite to Queen. He was the favorite child. She had 4 kids, and he was the third of the 4. And so, maybe it's because of his personality. He was fun to be around, according to what people say. He liked to share a lot of jokes. He liked to get people to laugh. And having this big time military background that really showed that he followed in his dad's footsteps, yeah, I could see why he would be the favorite. I'm sure she loved all 4 of them, but now he ain't the favorite anymore with these type of problems. And so here he is in trouble thanks to his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And so, here Epstein he was being held on federal sex trafficking charges when he died by what they ruled as suicide. And then you had Ghislaine Maxwell, who she was recently found guilty of conspiring with Mr. Epstein to recruit, to groom, and to abuse underage girls. That's where Virginia Giuffre and other people became a victim. And there's a lot of victims that were in her case against Ghislaine Maxwell. She had like 4 people that spoke up against her. And so these accusations against Prince Andrew, they first surfaced in 2015 during a federal lawsuit against Jeffrey Epstein in Florida. One accuser, Miss Giuffre, she claimed that the prince had raped her when she was 17. And then he has this disastrous interview with BBC, and that is where it was like, okay, now you need to get away from this, get away from the public, stop speaking, stop representing your highness. And so that interview, he was supposed to try to explain his friendship with Mr. Epstein. And boy, did it cause a lot of backlash after, characterizing the behavior of the sex offender, the convicted sex offender, as unbecoming. Yeah, those were his words, unbecoming. And so he said, I'm stepping away from public life. And so, even during this interview, he said he had no recollection of meeting Miss Giuffre. But yet, there was a picture that started surfacing in 2011. So that just doesn't look good. And so now there's troubles in royal land. And so you got this sexual abuse lawsuit against Prince Andrew, thanks to the scrutiny with his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. This has cast a big shadow over the British royal family, and they're really trying to stay out of this scandal lifestyle. And so he had these controversial friendships, friendships with Mr. Epstein. He was a friend, and he had Ghislaine Maxwell. She was a friend of his. So you had both of these people now convicted of sex trafficking. I mean, it's like, were they grooming these girls for Prince Andrew? Did he really think he would get away with this? You're Prince Andrew, dude. So, and then now you got sexual misconduct allegations. So Virginia Giuffre, she's claiming that Mr. Epstein had trafficked her to Prince Andrew, and that Prince had raped her when she was 17 years old. It's not looking good for this dude right now. Not looking good for him at all. And even though he's denying these accusations, and you have this terrible interview that he does with BBC, that did not help him when you're trying to explain this friendship you have. That, and then stepping away from public life. Now you got this lawsuit that goes now just from last year, August 21st. Giuffre files this lawsuit against Prince Andrew in federal court in Manhattan. You know what that means? That all of this baggage of the British household life is going to be going into light. And so that is where it is now. Now we just figure out what it is that we're going to be doing throughout this whole thing. And now, he can deny it all he wants. Now you got to prove it. Because how are you going to prove that you did not have sexual relations with that girl? You're not going to be able to. She's going to be able to say things that only someone who had sex with you would know. And on 3 occasions when she's 17. 3 different occasions when she's 17. That's not good. That's not good. And so you got that, and then you have this photo that you say I have no memory of ever taking. Well, there was a picture there, and it's still there. And he makes some bizarre claims to kind of deflect what the accuser is saying, where he is medically incapable of sweating, because she said he was sweating profusely during one of their encounters. And he says, I medically can't sweat. I could not medically sweat at that time because of some medication that he was on. And so he's going to have to try to prove that too. And, this lawsuit, though, against him in federal court is not going to go well. It's not going to go well. And here he is trying to dismiss this, right? He tries to dismiss this to get it thrown out. Okay? That makes sense. But everything comes crashing down once he does that. And so now, what's the queen thinking? What is she going through? I mean, she's been at this throne for 70 years. And here you have this announcement about the ruling of this sexual abuse lawsuit moving forward. Then, boom, right away, Buckingham Palace announces that the prince would relinquish his military titles and royal charities. Wow. So, I mean, along with that, he no longer can use the title His Royal Highness. You got to think about how bad this can be for that to be happening. And, but he does continue. He will continue not to undertake any public duties. He's continuing to stay out of the public eye. And he's defending this case as a private citizen. Well, private citizen, you're in trouble. So you're in trouble as you're facing this as a private citizen. And, you think about what does this announcement from the palace mean? It looks like they literally planned out how we're going to distance ourselves from him. Because they're not even giving him any efforts to rehabilitate himself. So they're just like, nope, we're moving on. And here you got this decision to keep him away from any military titles after everything he's done. You know why? Because they know this is a serious, serious crime that he has allegedly committed. And, losing his Royal Highness, this puts him on the same footing as his nephew, Prince Harry, who they said we don't want to keep any of our rights, him and his wife, Meghan, and so they were forced to give up both of their Royal Highness stuff. And, this is when they withdrew from royal duties. And they said, we're moving to the U.S. and live in Southern California. But this crime is 10 times worse. Prince Harry just said, I don't want to be a part of this family, basically. Or this part of this royal family lifestyle. His wife says Queen Elizabeth and the royal family are racist. And they have so much drama going on there. This doesn't make any of this any better. This actually makes it worse with what's going on right there. Because if you think about it, here Queen Elizabeth, the second, it's gonna be 70 years in February. And this was supposed to be a time to offer an opportunity to reframe the royal, narrative after all this turmoil that they've been going through over the last 3 years. And you have 3 years of, ugliness, basically. And so now they're trying to get out of that. But boom, then you have all of this back in the news of this sexual abuse lawsuit unfolding in a Manhattan courtroom. Wow, this is definitely going to put a dampener on any celebrations, right? And you have these deeper, more long-lasting risks that the monarchy won't be able to get over. Because you got this age of TikTok where everyone makes fun of everything, right? Or uses everything as a parody. Well, the Queen is up there quite a bit. And the royal family is up there quite a bit. People are going to keep talking about this. And, the Queen, she's beloved by the British public. They love her. They love her work. They love her work ethic. They love her long service of serving almost 70 years. She's been served by 14 prime ministers, beginning with Winston Churchill. She's even edged out Queen Victoria as the longest reigning monarch in British histories. But you got the younger generation who feel like these people today, the monarch today, they don't understand what this world is. And, being rocked by this scandal and accusations against Prince Andrew, that's not helping to give them a better perception of who they are in the public's eye. And a lot of people already felt that, they were alienated from the monarchy after Meghan and Harry's departure. Now this is even making it worse. And people just feel like that this is kind of an outdated family who is out of touch with contemporary moral values out here on what it is. And, in this interview with Oprah Winfrey, Meghan, she shared that, hey, I'm biracial, so our child is biracial, and I feel that there's racism within the royal family. She said that. I'm not saying that. She said that in her interview with Oprah Winfrey. And, so now you gotta ask, with Andrew thrown to the royal wilderness, basically, who's gonna reinforce the royal model of Prince Charles? He was well known, well liked, and so now we wonder. So we'll see what goes on with the royal family, because Queen Elizabeth II, she's getting close to 100, and she's not taking on more. They relinquished all his titles, gave it back to the Queen, but she's most likely going to give that to someone else. She can't do much with it. She's trying to, who's going to be her successor throughout this whole thing? I don't know that whole thing. I know that Prince Andrew was like 9th in succession to be as king or something like that. And, so now what is going to happen next with Prince Andrew? We don't really know. We don't really know what's going to happen next with Prince Andrew. And if both sides agree to a settlement, which would bring the civil lawsuit to an end, that's always a possibility. That's always a possibility. If they did settle, though, this would cost him a lot of money, but he won't be convicted of anything. And this would bring the civil lawsuit to an end if they come to a settlement. And so he wouldn't have to admit any liability or wrongdoing, which would then contradict what she's supposed to be after, right? Are you after money or doing the right thing? If she settles, then it was money all along. If she does the right thing and goes to the very end of this, you already went this far. Why would you settle? And so, this would definitely cost him a lot of money if they did settle. But he wouldn't have to admit any liability or wrongdoing. He can live with that, I'm guessing. And so now you have the lawyers for Virginia Giuffre and Andrew. They're going through legal discovery, the exchange of documents and the taking of depositions and talking to everyone, the experts and witnesses, so they got to have that done by July 14th. And so if the case goes to trial before a jury, it could lead to, a lot of laundry being thrown out there of the British family. And the laundry that would be thrown out there from Prince Andrew himself, that would really, it could literally undermine the monarchy with everything that is going on out there. That's why it's a matter of, okay, will there be a settlement, or is she going to go all the way with it? My guess is that it will go all the way. She went all the way with Ghislaine. No, she wasn't the one that was against Ghislaine. This was different. But I think she was actually a witness in Ghislaine's case. Anyway, thank you for joining me today. I'm Manny Rodriguez with Deep True Crime, where we like to dive deep and explore these cases. Before this case, I did not know as much about Prince Andrew, or before this whole Ghislaine and Prince Andrew, I didn't understand as much as I do now about sex trafficking and grooming and what that actually entails. I've always thought that they stole you from one country, took you to another country, and forced you into it. But I didn't realize the scope and how much wider this can be. Be careful out there, please. You never know when you need to be looking over your shoulders. Always look over your shoulders. You just never know. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to serving you again. Peace.